Okay, let's talk about Pete Fairbanks. And I'm going to say something that's probably going to make some people angry, but I genuinely believe it. The Blue Jays should have gone after Pete Fairbanks instead of making all these other moves. And if they had, they might actually have a legitimate closer right now instead of this mess they're dealing with. I know everyone's obsessed with the Kyle Tucker trade and the Bichette drama and all that, but nobody's talking about the fact that one of the best closers in the American League was sitting right there and Toronto just ignored him. Pete Fairbanks with the Tampa Bay Rays has been absolutely elite for years now. This guy throws 100 miles an hour consistently. His slider is filthy, and he's done it in meaningful games against the best competition in the toughest division in baseball. He's pitched in the AL East his entire career, which means he's faced the Yankees and Red Sox and Blue Jays constantly. He knows what it takes to succeed in this division. He's battle-tested. And most importantly, he's available. The Rays are always looking to move salary. They operate on a shoestring budget, and if Toronto came calling with a decent offer, they could have had him. But here's what drives me absolutely insane about this. Instead of going after a proven closer like Fairbanks, who they know can get outs in the AL East, the Blue Jays signed Tyler Rogers for a bunch of money. They're hoping Jeff Hoffman bounces back from his Game 7 meltdown, and they're just crossing their fingers that somehow this bullpen figures itself out. That's not a plan. That's hoping for luck. And you know what? Luck doesn't win championships. Having a legitimate shutdown closer wins championships. Let me break down why Fairbanks specifically makes so much sense for Toronto. First, the guy is in his prime right now at 31 years old. He's not some aging veteran on the decline. He's at the peak of his powers. Last season, he had an ERA under 2 and struck out over 13 batters per 9 innings. 13 per 9. That's elite level dominance. His fastball sits 99 to 101, and hitters literally cannot catch up to it even when they know it's coming. When you combine that velocity with his breaking stuff, he's essentially unhittable when he's locked in. Second, and this is huge, Fairbanks has closing experience. He's been the Rays' closer. He's pitched in massive games. He's gotten the final out in elimination scenarios. This isn't some setup guy you're hoping can transition to the ninth inning. This is a proven commodity who you know can handle the pressure. Compare that to what Toronto has right now. Jeff Hoffman has never been a full-time closer and just gave up the biggest home run in franchise history. Jordan Romano has been hurt and inconsistent. Tyler Rogers is a good pitcher, but he's never been the undisputed closer on a contending team. Fairbanks has done it all, and he's done it in the AL East, which is the hardest place to pitch in baseball. Third, the cost to acquire Fairbanks from Tampa wouldn't have been astronomical. The Rays aren't asking for your top 5 prospects for a reliever. They want to clear money and get something back. The Blue Jays could have put together a package of mid-level prospects and maybe taken on most of his contract, and boom, you've got your closer. Instead, they're paying Tyler Rogers big money in free agency when they could have traded for someone better. That doesn't make any sense to me unless the front office just fundamentally doesn't value the closer position, which would be insane given what happened in Game 7. Now let me address what I know people are going to say. They're going to say Fairbanks has had injury issues, that he's missed time, that he's not durable. And yeah, that's true. He's dealt with some shoulder problems, and he hasn't always been available. But you know what? Every reliever has injury concerns. It's the most volatile position in baseball. You're asking guys to throw as hard as they possibly can for one inning and do it every other day. Injuries happen. But when Fairbanks is healthy, he's one of the 5 best closers in the American League. That's worth the risk when your alternative is hoping Jeff Hoffman mentally recovers from Game 7. Here's what really frustrates me about Toronto's approach to the bullpen this offseason. They're treating it like it's not urgent. They're acting like they have time to figure it out, like they can just patch it together and hope for the best, but they don't have time. Their window is now. Vladimir Guerrero is going to be expensive to extend. Bichette might be gone. George Springer is getting older. This core isn't going to be together forever, and every year you waste is a year you're never getting back. Fairbanks could have been the immediate solution to their biggest problem, and they're just sitting there doing nothing about it. Let me give you a comparison that I think illustrates how valuable Fairbanks would be. Think about what the Yankees paid for Clay Holmes to be their closer, or what the Phillies invested in their bullpen. Contending teams prioritize having that lockdown guy at the back end because they understand that close games in October come down to who can get the final 3 outs. The Rays have one of those guys in Fairbanks. They'd probably trade him for the right price. And Toronto isn't even picking up the phone. Meanwhile, the Dodgers just traded for Edwin Diaz, and they already had a great bullpen. That's the difference between organizations that are serious about winning and organizations that are just trying to compete. And here's the thing about the Rays specifically. They're always willing to deal if the price is right. They traded Blake Snell. They traded Tyler Glasnow. They trade everybody eventually because that's their business model. Fairbanks is no different. If Toronto came in with a legitimate offer, Tampa would listen. They might not accept the first offer, but you negotiate, you find common ground, and you get your guy. But you have to actually try. You have to make the call. And from everything I'm hearing, the Blue Jays haven't seriously pursued him, which is organizational malpractice. Now let's talk about what Fairbanks would do for Toronto's bullpen structure. If you've got Fairbanks as your closer, suddenly everything else falls into place. Jeff Hoffman can be your eighth inning guy, where maybe he's more comfortable and doesn't have the pressure of closing. Tyler Rogers can be a versatile weapon who pitches in the seventh or eighth, depending on matchups. Jordan Romano can ease back from injury without the weight of being the closer. Your entire bullpen depth chart makes sense because you have clarity at the most important position. Without a clear closer, you're just mixing and matching and hoping somebody steps up every night. That's not sustainable over 162 games, and it definitely doesn't work in October. Here's another angle that nobody's considering. If you trade for Fairbanks now, you get him for multiple years of control, depending on his contract situation. But you're not just solving this year's problem, you're solving the next couple years too. That's way more valuable than signing some free agent closer to a 1 or 2 year deal where you have to go through this whole process again in 12 months. Fairbanks gives you stability at the position for the length of your competitive window. That's huge. And let's be real about something else. The AL East is going to be a bloodbath next year. The Yankees always have talent. The Orioles are young and hungry. The Red Sox are trying to get back into contention. Every game matters. Division games especially are going to come down to 1 or 2 runs. Having Pete Fairbanks to close out those games could be the difference between winning the division and playing in the wild card. It could be the difference between home field advantage in the playoffs and having to go on the road. Those margins matter, and elite closers give you an edge in those tight games. I also think there's a psychological component here that the Blue Jays are ignoring. If you bring in Pete Fairbanks and make him your closer, you're sending a message to your team and your fan base that you're serious about fixing what went wrong. You're acknowledging that the bullpen cost you Game 7 and you're doing something about it. That matters. Players notice when management addresses problems. It builds confidence. Right now, what message is Toronto sending? That they're okay rolling with the same group that failed? That they don't think the bullpen is a priority? That's how you lose a clubhouse. Here's my prediction, and I really hope I'm wrong about this. The Blue Jays are going to go into next season with Jeff Hoffman and Tyler Rogers and Jordan Romano and whatever random relievers they pick up, and it's going to be a mess. They'll blow some games in July and August. They'll lose a couple division games in September that come back to haunt them. And then in October, if they even make it that far, their bullpen will blow another playoff series. And everyone's going to sit there wondering why they didn't just trade for Pete Fairbanks when they had the chance. He'll probably be closing for some other contender, dominating like he always does, and Toronto will be at home watching. The bottom line is this. Pete Fairbanks is exactly what the Blue Jays need. He's available, and they're not getting him. That's a failure of vision and a failure of urgency by the front office. You can have all the offense in the world. You can have Kyle Tucker and Vladimir Guerrero and everybody else, but if you can't get the final 3 outs when it matters, you're not winning anything. Tampa Bay has the guy who can get those outs. Toronto should be doing everything in their power to go get him. Instead, they're going to watch another team make the smart move while they're stuck with the same problems that cost them a championship.